legalizingdrugs.com.
One of the most disturbing elements of the Prohibition War is how it's made police the enemy of otherwise law-abiding cannabis consumers. Fortunately, one group of police officers knows the futility of prohibition and reaches out to educate the community and current law enforcement. Today, the Russ Belville Show visits with another speaker from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition with one clear message: cops say legalize drugs.
I'll start with this and then I'll take it off.
What's up, everyone? Herb Thrasher with 420radio.org. Day 2, Sunday morning of the Boston Freedom Rally. Sitting here with one of the cannabis community's finest, LEAP. That's right, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, Mr. Jack Cole. Jack, how you doing this Sunday morning, sir?
Wonderful. What a beautiful day. It couldn't be better. Yesterday we got a little bit of rain, but even with that, we signed up 640 new members for LEAP. We're going to go over 1,000 today.
That is outstanding. Has to make you really happy to see great turnout like that, and then getting to meet so many people. Talk about LEAP for a second, and tell everyone what LEAP's all about.
Sure. LEAP is an organization that I co-founded with 4 other police officers after I retired from 26 years in the New Jersey State Police, 14 years undercover in narcotics. When I retired, I felt really bad about my role in implementing what today I feel is not only a failed war on drugs, but it's far worse, Herb. It's a self-perpetuating, constantly expanding policy disaster. Every year it's worse than it was the year before, and we've been doing it. We've been getting worse now for 44 years, so we're pretty bad by this time. The war on drugs has cost us, of your tax dollars and my tax dollars, over $1.5 trillion during that 44 years. And we are, at the end of this year, we will pass a new plateau. By the end of this year, what we will have to show for our $1.5 trillion is more than 50 million arrests in this country alone for non-violent drug offenders. Just think of that, 50 million people. This has to stop. So anyway, when I retired, I felt bad about what I'd done, and I sat down with those guys and we created LEAP. On the way to creating it, we did a lot of study, a lot of deep thinking about what should law enforcement really be interested in doing. And when we boiled it down to the essence, we decided that law enforcement should be interested in reducing 4 things: death, disease, crime, and addiction. And as you know well, all 4 of those categories are made infinitely worse by the war on drugs. So that definitely wasn't what we want. What we want is reflected in our name, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and that is we want to end drug prohibition around the world today, just like we ended alcohol prohibition in this country in 1933. Because we know the day after we ended that terrible law, Al Capone and all these smuggling buddies were out of business. They were off our streets. They were no longer out there killing each other to control that very lucrative market. They were no longer killing our kids, caught in crossfire, drive-by shootings, all the things we experience today. So we know that if we were to legalize these currently illicit drugs, we could take them out of the hands of the cartels, the criminals, and we could end this terrible gun violence of prohibition.
Absolutely. Sir, you know, one of the favorite words in the cannabis community is growing, and the cannabis industry has been growing so many years now, and LEAP has been setting up at festivals on the West Coast and on the East Coast. When you're out at these festivals, is your message different on the West Coast and the East Coast? How is your message today maybe different from when you're at the Seattle Hemp Fest? Or is it different?
It's not different at all. We only have one message, that's to legalize and regulate drugs. And I told you our main reason for that is to end the violence, but there's other fantastically good reasons. We believe, first off, we don't support drug use of any kind unless people are using it for medical purposes. But that doesn't mean that we think anybody should go to prison because they made a choice to use a drug. That should be a choice of any adult, and the police should have nothing to do with that choice, right? So, along with the ending the violence, once we legalize, we can regulate these drugs and we can control them. You know, you can't control or regulate anything while it's illegal. The control and regulation now is in the hands of the criminals. And I'm talking mainly about the hard drugs now. Once we legalize them and regulate them, we can end overdose deaths. Nobody has to die of an overdose of these hard drugs. I spent 14 years undercover out there on the streets living with those folks, and I can tell you nobody dies of an overdose because they shoot more and more dope. They die because they simply don't know how much that tiny little package of powder they're buying is really the drug and how much is the cutting agent. Too much drug in there and you're dead. And they don't know what the cutting agent is. Like for the last year they've been cutting heroin with fentanyl, a drug that's probably 30 times more powerful than heroin, and people are dying right and left for it. The reason they're dying is because there is no regulation on any of these drugs. It was the same thing that happened under alcohol prohibition. Before alcohol prohibition, we regulated the alcohol being produced in this country. Then when we prohibited it, there was no regulation, and suddenly we had 600% increase in people reporting alcohol poisoning in our hospitals because there was no regulation. People were making bathtub gin out of anything. They were even using wood alcohol instead of grain alcohol, and wood alcohol is a deadly poison. So no matter what you think of these drugs, it's always better to legalize the drugs than to keep them in the state they're in today. Another wonderful thing that can happen when we legalize the drugs is we can stop half of all potential cases of these terrible bloodborne diseases like AIDS and hepatitis C from ever occurring. According to the Centers for Disease Control in our country, 50% of all new cases of AIDS and hepatitis that are reported can be traced directly back to intravenous drug users sharing needles. And of course, if those drugs were legal, they wouldn't have to share those needles. Think of all the lives we could save. We could prevent our children from accessing most of these drugs because our kids for the last 30 years in high school have said it's easier for them to buy illegal drugs than it is to buy beer and cigarettes. And of course the reason for that is if they go into a legal place where we regulate the sale of alcohol and tobacco, somebody says, hey, you old enough to buy this? Let me see an ID. And you know that doesn't happen down the street corner. So why don't we at least make it as hard for them to buy heroin and cocaine and methamphetamine as it is to buy beer and cigarettes. And the last thing is, if we legalize these drugs, we won't have to arrest next year 1,700,000 people in this country for non-violent drug offenses, because that's what we do every year. We arrest them and we destroy their lives. And then we sit back when they come out of prison and they don't have an education because we snatched them off the streets when they were young and experimenting with drugs and ruined their education, and they don't have any education now. They're coming out of prison, they've been labeled drug dealers, nobody will hire them, so there's only one place they can turn to make a living, and that's right back to the drug culture, the very group we say we're trying to save them from.
Absolutely.
So we wouldn't have to do that. We could save $70 billion at least every year, because that's what we spend to continue fighting this war on drugs.
Herb Thrasher talking with Jack Cole from LEAP. So, sir, you guys, I'm noticing, your logo is the badge. You guys carried this in, and you have a nice, cool little pin. Talk about this pin for a second and tell people how they can get one.
Yeah, anybody that signs up for our email list. This is for our newsletter. Gets one of these free badges. And this is what they look like when you're wearing them out. They look good. And they get you in the greatest conversations because you're wearing this badge and people look at it and say, hey, are you a cop? And you say, no, I'm not a cop, but I belong to an organization of over 150,000 police, judges, prosecutors, and supporters. And guess what? They're all calling for the legalization and regulation of all drugs. If that doesn't get a conversation started, I don't know what will.
Absolutely. So tell everyone the website again.
The website is LEAP, for Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP.cc. It's like in Charles. That's not com. LEAP.cc. Or if you can't remember that, just put in copssaylegalizedrugs.org.
Right on. Sounds great. Herb Thrasher here with Sir Jack Cole from LEAP. I thought we would end this interview with a little bit of fun real quick. We know his policies. We know how he feels about cannabis and all this legalization. What's your favorite sports team, sir?
I don't have a favorite
No
sport.
sports?
I don't follow sports. I don't have time to follow sports.
What about music? What kind of music did you grow up on?
No, I grew up on
rock and roll?
Folk music and then rock and roll. And I like the folk music. I'm into a lot of activism. Always have been all through my life. And follow a lot of things. We supported the ERA, Equal Rights Amendment, for women back when it failed as an amendment. Gay rights, we were against the Vietnam War. I've been doing a lot of activism for all my life, and so I like the folk music because that talks about it.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Well, we thought we'd have a little fun. We always get to hear some of the serious stuff, and we don't get to get sometimes into the person that is Jack Cole from LEAP. All right, Jack, man, I can't tell you, I appreciate everything you guys do. You guys have become a foundation, a staple within this cannabis movement. And I really appreciate you guys sending this message out. I mean, one more question while I'm on it. Do police forces, are they receptive to your message? And yesterday, while I was at it, dude, I got to give the Boston Police Department a huge shout out. I really wasn't expecting to come here and see people smoking and the restraint. It had to make you feel good yesterday.
Yeah, the only thing I think they did wrong was they came walking their drug dogs through here, and that was just to intimidate people.
It was?
They didn't make any arrests, I don't believe, but they didn't need to do that. And guess what? I think they probably ruined those two drug dogs. I mean, there was pot everywhere. Those dogs must have been saying, "What is this? What are you doing to us?"
That's exactly right. All right, day 2 of the Boston Freedom Rally, 25th annual 2014. Look forward to you speaking today.
Yeah, I'm speaking at 3:30 over at the bandstand.
Stage. All right. Well, you guys definitely please support LEAP. They're a huge staple within our community, have a very, very, very important message, and we will continue to see LEAP out there doing great things. Sir, have a great day. Appreciate you, and keep doing what you do.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's our own Herb Thrasher at the Boston Freedom Rally. His first time out in Boston and first time as a Russ Belville Show correspondent, and did a phenomenal job. So good that we're going to do some more of that coming up here in hour 2. We got some walkabout footage, plus the 420 Countdown featuring Keith Stropp, the founder of NORML, and Rick Cusick from High Times Magazine on the main stage at the Boston Freedom Rally. If I've got this timed right, their countdown should be kind of close to the real 420 today, so that'll be kind of fun. Also, in our Daily Toker Tunes, Gordon Green's got the day off, but we're going to play that new parody video from Steve Burke for the Florida medical marijuana campaign, parody of Grease's You're the One That I Want. Then more Boston Freedom Rally, Mike Crawford, Canavest, Steve Bloom, and some reggae. For Big Al and Zane, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down.